Welcome to the Manifest Your Greatness podcast. This is episode number 93. Hi, friends. I'm Curtis J. Washington. And look, the purpose of this podcast is simple. We are constantly being bombarded with messages like, we could be happy if only we had a particular thing, or we could be successful if only we made X amount of dollars, or we could be at peace if only so-and-so loved me. These messages are not only disempowering, but also they are simply not true. This is because it's not about where you are and where you want to be. It's about who you are right now and who you wish to become. Once you know what the ideal you looks like, then you will automatically start becoming aware of what steps you can take right now to move in the right direction. And the goal of this podcast is to help you look within and discover all the love, all of the beauty, and all of the unlimited potential that you already possess, and for you to set it free for you and for the world to see. Welcome to the Manifest Your Greatness podcast. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this episode of the Manifest Your Greatness podcast, where we explore practical and actionable steps that you can take to help manifest the greatness that you already possess deep inside. And today I'd like to talk about trauma. Now, when people think of trauma, a lot of times they think about trauma with a capital T. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes when we think about trauma, we think about experiences that people have gone through that are so tragic, like going to war or losing a loved one in an accident or having to go through something that was just so overbearing that it took such a physical and mental toll on the person, and they just have not been able to recover from the devastating impacts of that experience. So this is what we call trauma with a capital T. And if you listen to my interview with Dr. Irene Kopp that I did recently, she explains this in a lot more detail. But basically, these are traumas that everyone is aware of and people can point to and say, yes, that's trauma. You've been through trauma. You have post-traumatic stress disorder, or you have something else that is linked to your trauma, and it's obvious because you were abused as a child. That's a traumatic experience that everyone can point to and say, yes, you've experienced trauma. Or you were living on the streets and you had to fight for your food on the streets, things like that. Yes, that's trauma, right? We are aware of these big T traumas, but what a lot of people do not take into consideration is that everyone has gone through smaller traumas, and not to discount them and say they're not as important, but they're easy to overlook. And these smaller traumas, because they're not recognized by the individuals who've experienced them, often go unnoticed, and they often go untreated, and they often go unexplored, and therefore they never become processed and released and transcended. Now, the thing is, all of us have been through trauma. And again, please listen to Dr. Irene Kopp's interview. She explains this in great detail, but we've all been through trauma. And the interesting thing about trauma is that trauma is necessary. It's something that we go through, and it's life-saving in the moment, right? I think about my father who fought in the Vietnam War, and he suffers from PTSD. Now, when we think about his experience, he was out there, people were shooting at him, he was shooting at people, there was death and blood and all kinds of horrific things going on. And this experience that he survived, of course, there were things that had to go on mentally, right, to get you through something that horrific. And your body figures out a way to do it. It just suppresses all of these emotions, and it takes them and it bottles them up, and it helps you get through that moment. It's survival, right? This is life or death, right? So you go through that, and then it helps you get through and onto, and in his case, he came back home, he survived, and he had an opportunity to live a long life after the Vietnam War. However, he carried that trauma with him and carried it with him throughout his life. And it's something that will never completely go away, right? You don't forget your trauma. You can process it, you can transcend it in a lot of ways, but that doesn't mean that the experience is gone, the trauma is gone. It's just been addressed, and you're able to process it, and you're able to continue to engage fully in society, in whatever you do, continue to push forward on your goals, even though you've been through these horrific things, right? That's processing the trauma, right? Now, that trauma kept him alive in the Vietnam War. It is not serving him now. And this is the difference. And this is the thing that I'd like to talk about. That's obvious, right? Obviously, if he could take a wand and say, okay, your trauma is now cured. You don't have to ever worry about feeling these emotions that you've been feeling from time to time because of the experiences that you've gone through. It can't be done, right? It can't be done. But the little traumas, the things that we go through, and I don't mean little as meaning discounted. Maybe we were not shot at multiple times, right? Maybe we were not injured and carried off in a stretcher and put in a rescue helicopter. That's one type of life or death experience that people go through. And that's, of course, a big T trauma. But a lot of us go through experiences that we just think are just bad experiences. And perhaps other people go through them, or perhaps it's not that important, or perhaps it just doesn't really have an impact on what I'm doing now. It's something that happened in the past, and therefore it doesn't impact me. Now, what I'd like to share is that these experiences that you may be discounting as something that you had and now is no longer a part of who you are and you've moved on, those are traumas, right? Those are traumas. If you've been through experiences that tested you in any way, shape, or form, it could have been something that really tested you mentally, right? Something that, you weren't sure how to handle, and you have these strong feelings about whether or not you handled it correctly back in the day, and maybe there was some significant collateral damage because of it. Maybe you regret saying some things. Maybe you regret doing some things. Maybe something happened to you that you're so embarrassed about that you can't even imagine sharing with someone else because you don't want to be vulnerable and share that with anyone. These are all traumas. These are all traumas. Okay. And I'll share with you some traumas that I've been through. So when I was a kid and I loved to play sports, I had an issue with my heart. And I've talked about this on one of my other episodes as well. But this situation that I had with my heart, it was called SVT, supraventricular tachycardia. And basically, it would kick in and my heart would beat much, much faster. And it would render me pretty much incapable of carrying on any vigorous athletic activity. And I loved sports. And when I was growing up, it wasn't something that was understood that well. And when I was growing up, there was also a lot of people, not a lot, but it was not uncommon for people who were training in football in the summertime to pass out, to end up in the hospital. And some of them even died through either heat exhaustion or dehydration. It was a different time, right? But it was a time when suffering was just considered part of the process and that everybody was going through it. So just suck it up, right? And that's what I did. But there came a point where I could not outrun my heart, right? I could not continue pushing forward when I had this heart rate of 220, 240 beats a minute because it physically was not possible. And I wasn't able to run as fast as some of the kids when this happened. I wasn't able to continue in the drills when this episode happened to me. And it happened relatively regularly, maybe a couple times a week. Not often enough that people thought I had no talent and that I had no skill and that I had no speed, but often enough where people thought, man, he's just really out of shape. I kept trying to fight through that, and people made fun of me. People called me names. The coach thought I just wasn't committed. Even my parents didn't understand what to do with it. They thought, oh, well, you're just out of shape. So I kept trying to fight through that. And then when I realized it was a losing battle, I kept trying to hide it. I was very embarrassed about it. I was like, why can't I kept thinking if I just trained a little bit harder, I would be able to have a stronger heart. If I just push myself a little bit further, I'd be able to last longer and this probably wouldn't be an issue. And everybody else must have the same heart that I do. So everybody else must be going through something similar. I just need to work harder at it. So I was very embarrassed by this. And ultimately, it kept me out of playing organized sports. So this is something that I hid. This is something that I was embarrassed about. This is something that made me feel less capable. It made me feel inferior. It made me feel as if I didn't have what it takes, um, physically, especially. So this was a major it was a major challenge for me to handle and to process. And I just continued on. I tried to figure out other things to do. I tried to study hard. And then I focused more on school and things like that. And other things happened. I was challenged because of my want and my desire to get good grades in school. I went to school in the South for a little while. I was told that I was trying to be white for trying to study hard, which is kind of crazy to think about now. Doesn't really make much sense, but at the time and where I was, that was the way people were talking to each other. And this was something that hit me really hard. What does that mean? Does this mean I'm trying to be someone I'm not? What does this mean? So again, this also affected the way that I looked at the world. It affected the way I interacted with people. I wondered what they were thinking. I felt awkward, and it showed over time. My social skills, I think even to this day, I'm very cautious of saying something that could maybe make someone feel bad or that could be interpreted in a negative way, things like that. And I'm saying these things because I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me, but I would like everyone to think about the things that they've gone through and really consider if they have had the opportunity to really process these experiences, because it comes out in how we act. It comes out in even what we think we're capable of. It can put up limitations on what we think we're even capable of attempting. We can shut ourselves down if we listen to some of these things that have happened to us in the past. And all of this culminated, I think, for me personally, as wanting to please people, as wanting to not let them down, as wanting to make them believe in me, but also for others to be able to depend on me. And that was a very big part of my identity when I was younger, that intention that I wanted to not let people down. So I did a lot of things to prove to myself and prove to others that I was dependable, that I had my stuff together, that I could be counted on, that I was going to be there. I was not going to let you down. I was going to, don't underestimate me. I'll surprise you in a good way. And that became the identity that I took on. And this stuck with me through my professional career as well. I was in finance. I worked in investment banking. I worked at Goldman Sachs. I was a vice president. I did all these things, and I was moving up the ladder, realizing along the way, maybe this is not what I want to do. But there was that drive inside of me that kept saying, I can't let people down. I can't let my parents down. I can't let myself down. I can't let my colleagues down. I can't let my boss down. I can't let anyone down. So I will suppress the want, the need, the desire to make a change in my life because I don't want to let these people that depend on me down. So I'm going to keep pushing forward. And I did it, and I did it, and I did it. And I did it out of care. I did it out of love. There were people who supported me throughout my career that I had a very close bond with. And I felt that not performing at my best level was a bad reflection on them. That's how close I felt. I was like, I want people to see how great a mentor this person was for me. And one of the ways I can do that is to show people what I'm capable of because of what this person helped me understand about myself, what this person showed me, what this person helped me better understand about my own capabilities. And I did that, and I did that, and I did that. Now, fortunately, when the financial crisis hit in 2008, I was let go of my job, right? So I was working as a vice president, and financial crisis happens, and I basically was told my services are no longer needed. There was a bit of elation because I was like, yay, someone gave me an excuse to stop doing what I don't really want to continue doing. And I didn't have the guts to say it myself. So I'm glad now hey, it's out of my hands. Look, I was let go, so I've got to do something else. So some people may think that it's weak to actually face your traumas, to acknowledge them, and when necessary, to seek help, right? To seek out a therapist or to seek out a coach or to seek out someone who can assist you in navigating that trauma and understanding how it's still holding you back and how you need to process that and transcend it in order to continue to grow, right? And like I said before, it's always the memories are always going to be with you. The experience is never going to go away. But once you've had a chance to process it, you're able to have those experiences and also continue forward to the fullest of your abilities. And the fact that some people think it's weak to acknowledge their traumas, I find to be a little crazy, because if you think about it, what takes more courage than facing your trauma, than coming face to face with your own demons, right? What could take more courage than that? To stare them down and say, I know you're there, come out. We have to discuss this and we have to figure out what's going on, because I'm not going to let you continue to run things behind the scenes. I'm going to take you out and I'm going to hold you in the light and I'm going to examine you and I'm going to figure out how I can deal with you in a way that's no longer going to impair my ability to do what I think I need to be doing to move forward with my life. That takes courage. That takes a lot of courage. So I want to emphasize that you don't have to have been through a war or a traumatic accident or gone to prison. You don't have to have gone through these types of big T traumas to have trauma, to have experienced that, to experience trauma. We all have. And in the moment, the experiences that we had were hard. They were tough. As we were growing, as we were trying new things, things happened, right? And these things help keep us safe, right? When these things happen, then we had to figure out how to get through in those moments. And it was tough. It was tough, but we did it. But in order to do it, we had to take a little bit of who we are and we had to cage it up. And every tough experience that you go through, you're taking a part of you, you're taking some of your spiritual energy and you're locking it up, because keeping that trauma out of sight, keeping that experience out of mind takes energy. So the longer you hold on to these things, and as you go through life, the more you accumulate, the less energy you have to shine, the less power you have to light up the world around you with your gifts. So it's very important that you process traumas that you've been through. And you may not even think you have any, but trust me, you do. We all do. Every single one of us has trauma. If you're alive, you've got trauma. Now, I'm not saying that this means that you have to go and sit down with a therapist and talk about it all, but what I am saying is that you need to acknowledge it. We all need to acknowledge it. This is a process that we go through to understand where we have energy that's locked up. Where is that energy that we'd like to have access to? We feel like we're trying to move forward, but for some reason we self-sabotage ourselves, or for some reason we're not motivated sometimes, or for some reason we can't seem to keep on track. We can't keep a clear head. We can't seem to keep focused. We get distracted. This is what happens when your energy levels are low, and trauma is the biggest stealer of energy. So give yourself some time to really shine the light inward on the experiences that you've been through, that you have not come to grips with, that you have not processed. No matter how difficult it might be to think of those things now, give yourself a moment and examine those. And don't try to justify what you did. Don't try to rationalize the trauma away, right? You can't just pile on top of it and keep going, or else eventually everything that you've built will fall down, right? Or at least you will hit a limit and you can no longer build any higher because you're building on unstable ground. And that's what those traumas are, right? They create cracks in everything that you're trying to build, and you continue to waste a lot of energy trying to hold things together as you continue to try to grow. So acknowledge these traumas, examine these traumas. If you need help, get help to process and transcend these traumas. So that's what I wanted to share today, and that is my challenge for everyone out there. Take some time to really dig deep, to really go inside and really take a moment to get a better understanding of what you've been through that hurt, what you've been through that still stings when you think about it, what you've been through that may be forcing you to shy away from trying certain things because you had an experience and now it's jaded your whole ability to be able to try something new because of this experience that you had. It's holding you back, right? I do it, but this happened last time. Or I try it, but I don't know. Last time I did something like that, it just, I never recovered, and I'm still suffering from it now. That's trauma. All of these things are trauma. So take the time, go inside, and really acknowledge those traumas. Acknowledge them. They served a purpose. At the time, they kept you safe. At the time, they may have kept you alive. Right now, they're holding you back because that's gone. That situation is past. That experience it's history. But that trauma is holding you in that point in time. It's keeping a piece of you in history. It's locking up some of your potential and holding it years in the past. And you've got to break that. That's a cycle you've got to break. You got to cut that cord. Yeah, it's still going to exist, but it's not going to be pulling on you like a rubber band anymore. So take the time. That's my challenge. Take the time, take a deep dive within, and really examine what you've been through. And if you need help processing it, get help. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Manifest Your Greatness podcast. And I look forward to spending time with you again on an episode in the near future. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Manifest Your Greatness podcast. If you liked what we've explored on this episode, then you'll love the Manifest Your Greatness coaching program. The Manifest Your Greatness coaching program is uniquely tailored to help support you on your journey to become the absolute best version of yourself. So if you are committed to taking the steps required to significantly and permanently level up in any area of your life, visit manifestyourgreatness.com/contact. Again, that's manifestyourgreatness.com/contact and schedule your free consultation call today. Talk soon.